I want to point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I want to hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Welcome to Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. We are doing the May 1st Energy Week show, and now what we're dealing with is the news.
We ate the dessert first.
We ate the dessert first, we sure did. Okay, so I'm just going to go right in. Do you speak any Arabic?
Shway, shway.
Ah, that's as much as you've got? Okay. From the 25th of April, we have this from Al Arabiya. Al Arabiya.
Al Arabiya, yeah.
Arabiya?
Al Arabiya.
Okay.
The Arabic people.
Okay. Africa's largest wind farm at Tarfaya in southwestern Morocco has started generating electricity and will be capable of meeting the electric needs of several 100,000 people, officials say. It has a capacity of 300 megawatts. They don't use as much power there as they do in the United States.
They're catching up.
Everybody's catching up.
I mean, I find it ironic. I mean, here's all these companies with our oil underneath their sand, and we're using up all the oil, stealing it from them. And what have they got left? Sun.
Yes. Yeah, well...
They're going to be set for the next 1,000 years.
I think so, or longer.
Matter of fact, I've read some projections where they're actually talking about super solar farms in the Sahara.
Yes.
Pumping the energy up into Europe.
Into Europe, which would give the people in Africa an opportunity to continue their dominance of the energy market.
In Africa.
People in the Middle East.
In the Middle East, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
That's my whole point.
They have an area down there called the MENA, Middle East North Africa.
Yep.
And that's what they're working on. They're trying to get as much power going. The Saudis are putting in a lot of power from sun, and I think they're putting in wind power too. And I would imagine that the desert there would be able to produce quite a lot. They don't have a lot of cloud there.
Well, wind power is a natural.
Yeah.
They have they name the winds over there, you know.
Yeah.
And they have a wind called a shamal.
Yeah.
And for about 9 months of the year, the shamal blows steadily, 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's not going to blow you over, but it's a steady wind. It's steady. Yeah. It's probably the only thing that makes living outdoors even doable.
Huh.
If they didn't have that wind, it'd be 114 degrees out. If you didn't have a wind blowing on you, you'd fall right over.
Yeah.
But it works. I mean, they've lived there for a couple of thousand years. They didn't have air conditioning.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. From UPI.com, we have this. Solar power now accounts for about 1.1% of total capacity in the United States electric grid, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in its monthly report on electric generation in the U.S. grid. Now, this is grid power, which means that anybody who's off-grid is not included. Mm-hmm. Solar power has had a 418% increase in capacity since 2010.
Okay.
I would warn everybody, the U.S., the EIA, Energy Information Administration, is notorious for producing numbers that are wrong. But this is what they're saying. I mean, they projected an amount of renewable power might be achieved by 2035 that had in 2013. They made the projection, and the amount had already been achieved.
That's right. I read that.
And this is a real problem, but they're constrained in their projections to follow certain formulas, and the formulas don't work for real projections. Next, from Renewable Energy Magazine, Con Ed Solutions and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey unveiled one of 4 new solar installations at Newark Liberty International Airport. It is a 633 kilowatt PV system, the first at any airport buildings operated by the Port Authority. That's fairly good sized.
Well, Newark Airport's a big airport now.
It is. I remember it when it was like one big room.
I've been there. I used to fly out of Newark a lot because
Did you?
you didn't have to wait in line.
Yeah.
You go to Kennedy, you go to LaGuardia, you know, it was all crowded. Nobody went to Newark.
Yeah.
Of course, you couldn't get anywhere.
Well, I used to go into Newark because I lived in New Jersey at the time, and you know, I'd pick up relatives or whatever, and they would come in to Newark from nowhere because that's where you went and to and from.
Well, I was fortunate because I had a lot of business in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
And it was regular flights from Newark to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah. Anyway, that was all on the 25th. And on the 26th, we have this. Rooftop solar, are the grids really needed? This is an opinion piece from Clean Technica. Being off-grid in the outback makes economic sense, but the bigger question for network operators around the world is whether those in more populated area, even cities, will look to adopt similar measures.
I was going to comment on that. I read that. This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because as you know, Australia is very sparsely populated.
Yep.
Because it's a very large country with, and they're finding out that all of this electrification they did in the 20th century was costing them an awful lot of money. When there's 5 miles, 10 miles between a house, and they have to run the pole lines, it cost them a lot of money to put them in, but of course the government paid for it because it was a rural electrification thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're maintaining these pole lines.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at it and saying, we're not getting the income, forget about the profit, the income to pay for these lines. So now they're coming up with a new plan, which looks likely that it will be implemented, is they're going to have regional generating with wind or solar that's going to take care of a small area, and they're going to tie everything together, and it's not going to be connected to the major grid, or in some cases it might be.
They're looking at big-sized microgrids spread out over the country.
Spread out, yeah, but they're still microgrids, and they're doing it just because it's really about the only way to make sense.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is that people who are into electric transmission in Australia are trying to do this. The people who are operating coal-burning plants are kind of at odds with them. The government is at odds. The government is very profoundly against renewable power. It's basically, you know, their person on point for renewable power is a climate change denier. I mean, it's
well, we don't really understand how powerful the coal lobby is in Australia, and it's been powerful for probably since it's been in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, you've got a huge area that has huge mineral resources and not very many people.
Exactly.
So that is really, it kind of explains Australian politics.
To a very great degree.
Yeah.
Very great degree.
Okay. Also,
this too will change.
Yes, it will. Also from Clean Technica, we got this on the same date, the 26th. In yet another signal that the era of fossil fuels is drawing to a close, a jury just awarded a whopping $3 million to a Texas family for health and property impacts linked to a nearby Aruba Petroleum fracking operation. Yep. And those poor people had very real problems that developed from chemicals that existed in their environment. And I don't know how much farther that's going to go, but...
Well, it's pretty likely that it'll be appealed. The fracking company's denying it.
Yes.
We're not responsible
That's
for
not
any of
us.
that. We're meeting state standards,
Yeah, right.
And it remains to be seen who's got the better lawyer.
Well, the thing, though, is, regardless of what happens in this particular case, you know that the case is going to be repeated.
Oh, yeah.
Other people will do the same thing, and when they see a $3 million award, there'll probably be flocks of people going to that to make up for their losses.
Now, there's something similar going on right now in Texas,
Yes.
where there's a lawsuit being launched against the wind company.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that's pushing the lawsuit is the president of the electric company.
Yes. Well,
I thought
What
I
can
had
you
something
say?
on that one, but I can't find it.
okay. The next same
Yeah,
day.
I got it here, I think.
What's that? Oh, yeah, I remember that picture. That's a beautiful picture.
No, this isn't the same article.
Okay.
It's Exelon, but it's not the same article.
Okay. GE Energy Financial Services announced it has exceeded $10 billion in renewable energy investment commitments worldwide to become one of the industry's leading investors. The projects avoid greenhouse gases equivalent to the annual emissions of all the cars in Massachusetts. That's from GE.
That's taken a while to settle down there.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff, though. Okay, moving on. On the 27th, we got this from Clean Technica, a new report from New York State, where a de facto shale drilling moratorium has persisted since 2008, concludes that unless natural gas prices double, much of the shale gas in the state cannot be profitably accessed by oil and gas companies.
You can't get it.
They can't get it unless the price doubles. Now, this is,
So this is some other thing happening.
yeah,
This is economics
This is
again.
the other reason
Yeah.
why there's an oil bubble or a fossil fuel bubble or carbon bubble. It's not because pressure's coming from the United Nations or from nations, but because to stop global warming, but because
It just costs too much.
it costs too much.
Yeah.
And when the price of natural gas doubles, and we compare that with the cost of renewable resources, for example, electricity from solar and wind driving heat pumps to heat houses instead of using natural gas,
You're going to change the whole picture.
the picture changes.
I just got that article.
Which article? The one I just read?
Fracking impacts on property rights and home values. This
Oh,
is
okay. Yeah.
Drilling versus the American Dream. It's a short article here, or at least I made it short. Look no further than Exxon CEO and board chairman Rex Tillerson, who is suing to stop construction of a water tower that would supply nearby drilling operations because of the nuisance of, among other things, heavy truck traffic, noise and traffic hazards from the fracking operation a tower would support. That's right. The head of the single largest drilling company in the world acknowledges the constant and unbearable nuisance that would come from having lights on at all hours of the night, traffic at unreasonable hours, noise from mechanical and electrical equipment. Tellingly, Tillerson's lawsuit, filled in 2012 with other plaintiffs, including former House Majority Leader Dick Armey, claims the project would do irreparable harm to its property value.
Well, it probably will, but it won't do any harm to people who live in tiny villages in North Dakota.
Or North Texas.
Or North Texas, because their property has no value. So we can diminish the value. I mean,
There's a little bit of hypocrisy there.
a little bit of hypocrisy, yes, indeed. Yeah. Okay. Also on the 27th, from Biomass Magazine, I always get the feeling that these people report news that is just really kind of slanted toward their own point of view.
Well, I don't think so. I think you're a conspiracy theorist.
No, I believe in a conspiracy of what is going on, motivating many people to do the same thing. Each for his own identical reason. There are choices for biogas projects about what to do with the gas. They're generating gas from a biogas project, say a farm biodigester. You get gas. What do you do with it? Well, typically what they do today is they burn it in some kind of internal combustion machine to make fuel as fuel. But here, a developer may produce power for sale to the grid, but there is an increasing appeal to use it to replace natural gas, offsetting fuel costs. New chemical processes make that conversion easier. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff in biogas that you want to get out of it.
Yep.
Carbon dioxide being one of the culprits. Other culprits are sulfur dioxide, and
The stuff that smells bad.
yeah, and there's a set of silicon compounds, and I forget the name of them, but they don't always, but they can come out of these operations, and they make it really hard to use this in place of natural gas. But if you can scrub it so that it becomes, all right,
So that's what this is all about.
that's what this is all about. And that thing about the price of natural gas doubling in order to get the fracking
Yeah.
going, with this stuff, the price of natural gas goes up, which it almost certainly will. These guys can make some money doing that, just taking the biogas and putting it right into the gas lines. And this is something that, for example, Middlebury College is doing this. They're taking the biodigesters that they've got 10 miles away, and what they had been doing, what they had originally planned, was to have that gas compressed and trucked to Middlebury College.
Okay.
But what they're doing instead is they're taking advantage of this gas pipeline that's going on in between Rutland and Ticonderoga.
Which
And-
isn't a fait accompli.
No, it's not. But they're hoping
Yeah.
Middlebury College, which is all that green, is hoping that project, if it goes in, will give them the
Give
ability,
them a different option.
right, instead of driving a truck back and forth. And that means that they could take natural gas out of a pipeline and put natural gas into the pipeline elsewhere and reduce their costs. So, you know, we've got a lot. This is not an easy issue.
No, different forces are working against each other here.
Yeah, and might end up working together.
Well, that'd be good.
Yeah. Okay. So that from Biomass Magazine. On the 28th of April, from a publication called The Australian, there's so much news coming out of Australia. People in Australia, you know, this is an issue for them. They're fighting over it.
Oh, yeah.
In Australia, up to $4 billion worth of gas-fired power stations are in danger of being stranded as gas prices explode and the renewable energy target pushes extra generation into the grid already oversupplied with excess power, a new report has found. Now, the United States is the only place where this fracked gas is really hitting the market at reduced prices.
Yeah, that's correct.
In
Yeah.
Germany, they have natural gas. They don't want to use it. They went to coal because it's cheaper, and now they want to stay with coal because of the situation in the Ukraine.
And throughout Europe, where given an opportunity, the voters are expressing their will that they don't frack.
That's right, yeah. They would much rather have wind turbines right next to them than fracking going on under their feet. So this is an issue, and I think people should be aware of the fact that the U.S. gas situation is, I think it's a bubble. I think it cannot continue the way that it is.
Well, the problem is, as I see it, we've got this gas. We don't have the infrastructure to get it to market. So what are they going to do with it? The price is going down to encourage people to use it.
Right.
They're still dying to build the infrastructure, but that isn't going to happen overnight.
Right.
We're talking 10, 15 years before they can get this stuff to boats where they can bring it over to Europe.
Right.
And just because of the time element, I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, the other thing too is it takes a long time to convert a coal plant to natural gas or to build a new natural gas plant. And if you were a banker and I came to you and said, I want $1 billion to build a natural gas plant, before you loaned me the money, you would say, okay, what's going to happen to the future of the price of natural gas? What's going to happen to the future price of electricity? And, you know, is this a safe investment?
Absolutely.
And if you have another person saying, I want to come to you, I want you to lend me $1 billion for wind or for solar, You're going to ask exactly the same questions, except with wind and solar, you know where the price of the fuel is. It's always going to be the same. And so there's a level.
And the time element's a lot shorter.
Time element is a lot shorter. That's true. And so solar and wind wind up being very possibly much more attractive places to put money.
Oh, exactly. That is happening. It's just beginning to happen.
Yeah.
But people like Forbes, people like Wall Street Journal are starting to write about exactly that.
Starting to.
5 years ago, that would have been anathema.
Yeah, that's right.
It would not have been
And
possible.
to a certain extent, it still is. Forbes has got a lot of
Oh, yeah.
articles appearing in it saying this isn't going to work.
If they write one article proposing this kind of stuff, in that same issue there'll be 5 articles opposing it.
Well, they've got their own advertisers. Their
Oh,
own.
sure, that's what they do for a living.
Yep. Okay. On the 29th of April, from the local .de, which is a German website, we have this. German and international researchers have succeeded in converting water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight into kerosene.
Bingo. I got that one.
In a
I got it.
project that holds the possibility of producing a completely renewable
I've got a picture of that. I showed it up
aviation fuel.
before.
Now, everybody, you know what it looks like.
Well, this is a laboratory thing, but
I don't know what it is, but you know what it looks like.
no, I got a little bit of information here.
Sorry.
What you're seeing there is not a solar cell,
Yeah, I know
but
that.
as you can see, it's very bright, and they're concentrating sunlight on it. And it says here the basic idea is to reverse the combustion process. What we do is take carbon dioxide and water vapor and introduce energy to produce fuel. The German Aerospace Center's Institute of Combustion Technology in Stuttgart. That's where they make Porsches. The centerpiece of the 4-year project, known as Solar Jet, is a solar reactor that uses focused sunlight to heat up a metal oxide. Water and carbon dioxide are then passed into the reactor, which we're looking at right now, at 700 C, which is 1300 F. That's pretty hot.
It's hot,
Where they spit up, I think the word is split up,
probably.
and form into a synthetic gas composed of hydrogen and carbon monoxide. The gas is then compressed and sent to Shell, where it is converted into a hydrocarbon fuel similar to conventional kerosene.
Interesting. Now, the Shell thing, these are, in all of this science is based on earlier science. It always
absolutely.
is. And the Shell is probably using a catalytic system that's been used in the fuel industry for a long time called the Mobil process, which was introduced in the 1930s. This, however, is new. The idea of heating these things up using sunlight is very interesting. And
This stuff is new. A lot of people are looking at alternatives to electrolysis,
yes,
and they're popping up right and left.
Right.
This is one of them. The Navy's got one going.
yep,
And they're looking for the same reason. They want to get fuel out of it.
they want to get fuel out of it. It's very interesting to see this develop because it means basically this is yet another of those processes that takes the output of the fossil fuel plant and creates fuel with it, which could then be used by the fossil fuel plant. It almost sounds like an eternal motion machine where the carbon atom just goes round and round and round. And first it's
But
burned.
there's
and
sunlight going into
there's
it.
sunlight, and you look at that, you can see
There's a lot of sunlight.
There's a lot of sunlight, and 1,300 degrees. When I was a young whippersnapper, and my hair looked like Ron Weasley's because it was kind of orangey red. I used to work in a chemical plant where I was operating kilns, and 1,300 degrees was one of the cooler temperatures. The lowest we had was 1,150, but 1,300 was glowing a fairly nice
I bet it is,
red, and it was. I used to put trays full of crucibles into these things, and I just take the tray, put it on, and shove it in. And the only protection on my hand was a pair of garden gloves. Mm-hmm. But that's all I needed at that temperature, unless I was actually going to be touching something that was that hot.
Yeah, you would put something in the oven.
Yeah, and it was it was 1,300 sounds like it's a lot, but it's not that hot. We did 2,300. That's hot. That made you feel like you were getting a sunburn if you were 5 feet away from it when the door opened. Okay. Green Mountain Power. This from Green Energy Times. You ever hear of that? Green Mountain Power has announced that under a new revenue sharing agreement stemming from the sale of Vermont Yankee in 2002, GMP will receive as much as $17.8 million. The money will be directed to GMP customers in the form of lower rates.
This is all over the news right now.
Yeah.
We're hearing it on radio. And,
Yeah.
it's a deal they made a long time ago.
Yep.
And I don't think anybody expected something like this to happen, but we happen to have had a really cold winter.
Yep.
Energy made a lot of money.
Yep.
And Green Mountain Power is entitled to some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's hope that we can get enough money to go party. It would be nice to be able to have a barbecue.
What Green Mountain Power has said is they're going to use it to reduce your bills. So they're not pocketing the difference. They're spreading it out.
Yeah, and they have other money coming in from other sources that are also being distributed. And some of that is going to communities with the idea that, that could be used for possibly financing some community power or efficiency, getting efficiency systems into homes and so forth.
Efficiency is still the best way.
Efficiency, the one thing about efficiency, though, is that you can't go 100% of the way on efficiency. You really can't. But
Yeah.
it is very important. It's really hard to heat your house with solar and provide yourself electricity with solar if your house is uninsulated and leaking like a sieve.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
you gotta do a little bit of everything. But one of the things that I've been reading about, and in fact I wrote an article about it for Green Energy Times, which was the source of this particular article, is what's called a passive house. And in a passive house, which is not passive solar,
Right.
the house is heated
by the people in it.
by the people in it doing their daily stuff. I mean, in a house that is that well provided for in terms of efficiency, insulation, windows being insulated and sealed and so forth, and you have to have air exchange in there, which has to go through a heat exchanger. 100 watts of power is substantial. And 100 watts is, I give off more than 100 watts. Mm-hmm. So,
Especially when you're talking.
yeah, it's really kind of amazing. You can invite me to your home for dinner, and I will heat it up for you in the... Okay, let's get off of that one. On the same day from Reuters, we had this: lower natural gas prices and stagnant growth in the electric demand will lead to a loss of 10,800 megawatts. Now that's the equivalent of about 11 nuclear power plants of nuclear generation operation. They are saying that much being lost in nuclear generation. This is about 10% of the total capacity of all nuclear plants in the United States. So they're saying about 10 nuclear plants will close down. By the end of the decade, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and I've already warned people not to take their numbers too seriously, but it's worthy of note when they say something. It's just that you have to think, is this really true? 10 nuclear plants closing down by 2020 or 2021, depending upon
Wasn't there about 5 already scheduled to close?
I don't know how many are scheduled to close. I know that there's Oyster Creek is scheduled to close, and I know that Exelon has said that it's got about 5 that it's thinking about closing. And I don't think Entergy has said what they were planning on doing, but I would not be at all surprised if they closed the Pilgrim plant.
I wouldn't either.
Because honestly, between you and me and anybody watching on television, I think the Pilgrim plant is in worse shape than Vermont Yankee was.
It could very well be. And these decisions aren't being made because people are protesting.
No, I don't think so.
If there's any culprit, it's natural gas.
Well, it's natural gas, but I think they're looking at the natural gas thing, and if they're being realistic, which they might not be doing, what they would say is, okay, natural gas has punched us a few times, and we're hurting. But the problem is, even when the price of natural gas goes up, the problem isn't going to go away, because natural gas is starting to get hurt by wind and solar. Mm-hmm. So wind and solar are going to come in, and it's going to be closing nuclear power plants.
So they got 1-2 punch from natural gas.
And the third
and
one.
They fell down, and now they're getting up again.
Yep.
And wind and solar is going to whack them.
I think
stay
so.
Down.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And I don't know how much, you know, the other thing, of course, is that we've got James Hansen and other scientists saying that we need nuclear power in order to stop global warming. And I will just disagree with them on that, because
there are alternatives.
There are alternatives. The alternatives have been shown to be workable. And nuclear power takes a long time to build. Even those mini plants they're talking about bringing in, when they're talking about tiny nuclear plants, they're talking about something that is big. And okay, you can put the plant on a truck, but so what? Mm-hmm. The problem with those things is they still have to be sited, they still have to be licensed, they still have to be permitted, they still have to get local approval, they still have to go through a whole bunch of things, and the first one to come out cannot come out before 2022. And that's going to be the pilot project. Mm-hmm. And then after that, what's going to develop? We have to be putting those things in if we're going to go to mini plants at a rate of 1 a month from 22 on to have any real impact on energy, on climate change. And by 2050, and by that time, I think we're going to have, you know, the UN report, the IPCC report, basically one of the scenarios that they had on there says that we will be in a period of profound negative carbon emissions by 2060. And honestly, I think that'll happen before 2060. Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of got to happen.
It's going to have to happen, but I think that it will because of the nature of the things, which means that these nuclear power plants are going to be answering a problem that we won't have by the time they come online. Mm-hmm. And they're expensive.
But how would I say this? Are they real now, or are they just still an engineer's dream?
They're still an engineer's dream. The DOE is putting $1 billion into developing the first ones. The first one has not yet been built. They are said to be foolproof, but if you look at the projections of the nuclear industry, I think basically what they mean by foolproof is foolproof unless some fool gets a hold of it. And
I was trying to come up with something very much like that.
Really, I mean, just think about this for a second. 480 nuclear generators have gone online, nuclear reactors. Of those, 12 have melted down. That's 2.5% of all of them that have come online have melted down. Why? Because their calculation fails to account properly for human error.
Yep.
Where is the human error? Well, one place you can have human error is in the design phase, where you're trying to design a foolproof reactor. So what does foolproof mean? It does not mean foolproof. It means foolproof unless some fool was involved. And it's not just the design of the reactor, it's the siting. I mean, a good example of what can go wrong, there are 2 reactors in Wisconsin. And I could be wrong about this, but if I'm wrong, it's not by much. My recollection is that those 2 reactors are at a distance from the front lead edge of the Peshtigo fire that is less than the distance that was the greatest distance jumped by the Peshtigo fire.
I don't know the Peshtigo fire.
The Peshtigo fire happened the same day as the Chicago fire, but it was in Wisconsin. And it just wiped out whole villages, everybody died. And it was about 2/3 the size of the state of Connecticut. Everything burned down. And the biggest barrier that it is known to have jumped is Green Bay. Mm-hmm. Now, Green Bay is 10 to 20 miles across. Mm-hmm. So it jumped a minimum of 10 miles, but it is possible that the Peshtigo fire jumped Lake Michigan.
Wow.
because there was a similar fire the same
On the
day
other side.
on the other side. And they know that it jumped huge distances because among the other things that were found was the sign for a hardware store or a general store that was in a village that was completely burned down. Now the sign still existed, but it was many miles from where the village had been.
So it got blown there.
It got blown there, and they're saying in the process of getting blown there, it must have gone high enough to put the fire out that was burning on it. So it probably went up to 30,000 feet and fell. Okay, so here are two reactors, which by law you cannot put them in a site unless it meets any
Certain safety.
safety,
requirements.
any natural disaster that happened in that area in the last 100 years. And they were closer to that fire, I think, than one side of Green Bay is to another. And
Nobody's looking at that one.
no one's looking at that. You know, it's kind of like the tsunami of 1896, which was just as bad as the one of 2011. But they didn't pay attention to that when they put in the power plant at Fukushima. There's
This is
Chernobyl.
where it is today.
Oh, wow.
And all of that structure that you see in there is just covering up.
Yeah, well, they
And the
have
reason why this even came up in the news is that's about reaching the end of its lifetime, and they're about to make a change. They're going to build a permanent tomb for it.
Yep. That sounds like typical human
And
hubris.
Chernobyl is in Ukraine.
Yes. And so they're wondering whether they're going to be able to do it because the Russians might prevent it from happening. Having caused the first disaster, they may cause another one. Okay. Now, where were we?
Well, you were talking about mini nuclear plants.
Yeah, but that wasn't out of the news. I was reading that Reuters thing about nuclear power plants being closed down, and we're going
yes,
to
you
the
are.
30th of April. A key part of the Obama administration's green policy received surprisingly strong Supreme Court support over efforts to curb air pollution. A 6-2 majority of justices, this is a
I read that one.
pretty
Yep.
wide majority of justices, issued a decision upholding federal agency rules to control coal-fired power plant emissions from 28 states. This is emissions crossing state lines. It's something
Yes.
that is important to Vermont because
got
the
something up
damage
there.
that has been done to Vermont by coal emissions from Ohio and Pennsylvania and New York, and I mean the mercury that we've got in our waterways is because of coal.
I've got a summary here.
Okay.
A 6-2 majority of justices issued a decision upholding federal agency rules to control coal-fired power plants emissions from 28 states. It was a rare environmental victory in a conservative majority court that has in recent years generally sided against the federal government's nationwide clean air policies. And what it said is the highlights were that the justices gave surprisingly strong support to the president's green policies. The 6-2 majority upholds rules controlling coal-fired plant emissions from 28 states. And as you mentioned, with the emissions crossing state lines, that's the whole basis of this. I remember the Ohio River plants
Right.
with huge mile-high stacks.
Yeah.
And the emissions weren't bothering anybody locally, but they were coming down in Rhode Island.
Yeah. And what the coal industry has been saying for about the last 2 years is that if this particular ruling came, which it has now, it would mean that about a third of the coal plants in the United States would have to close. And that is going to change the structure of electricity costs, and so forth.
I think you better run that one by me again.
They
That,
said
that
a
sounds
third-
like
a
a
third-
lot, a huge mouthful right there.
That's right. A third of the coal burning plants in the United States would close, and the others are going to have emissions controls put on.
Which
This
are going to be very expensive.
expensive,
and
and
it's
it's
going
going
to raise the cost of power.
It's going to raise the cost of power, and it's going to make things like solar power and wind power much more attractive, both to communities and to individuals, and of course to utilities. Although I think the utilities are not as well positioned for particularly for solar, as individuals. Individuals can make, a difference with solar. It's hard for utilities.
The utilities are starting to get into it.
They sure
there's
are.
some very large solar plants.
Right. And I think that in many places we're going to be seeing community wind farms. You know, the Greensburg, Kansas comes to mind. They've got their own community wind farm. Okay, we're after 12 o'clock as we are taping this or recording this, not with tape. And so I think we've got four more items to deal with here. We should get to them. The American wind industry continues the construction boom that started in 2014 with more than 13,000 megawatts of wind energy projects under construction at the end of the first quarter. That's kind of amazing. That's a third of all, it's more than a third of all power construction in the United States presently going on is wind. Now, trailing that is natural gas, which is going to take a lot longer to come online.
Yep.
And during the time that comes online, there's going to be more wind coming on. And in third place is solar. So I think we're seeing a point here where renewable power is really starting, it may dominate 2014. It'll be interesting to see what the final numbers are. That was from Alt Energy Mag. And the thing, by the way, that before that about the justices was from CNN. You can get to these at geoharvey.wordpress.com, or you can go also to greenenergytimes.org or .net to get it, because the daily updates are there. A new report from Oak Ridge National Laboratory estimates that there is a potential for over 65 gigawatts of new hydropower development across more than 3 million rivers and streams in the United States.
That's the one we talked about already.
We talked about that earlier, but they're talking about what's called stream reach.
Exactly.
And I read the report as far as I could before I came in today, and I was unable to find out what stream reach is. It may be what James Perkins was talking about in the microhydro, where you're just taking water from one place and putting it in another a few hundred yards away. Or it may be something else, but the pictures that they had.
Look up at the map there.
Yeah, the pictures they had in the report showed weirs, for not dams. So I'm not sure exactly how this all fits.
Well, if you take a look at those maps, they're not counties.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out what they are, and I suspect that a stream reach, and this I'm just guessing, but I suspect a stream reach is something like a watershed.
Yes, I would think that's the case.
And these areas that you see there have been defined as the stream reach of a certain river.
Right.
It's watershed.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And it looks like, and there's significant power. It looks like some of it is in Bennington County.
Western Vermont and northern Maine.
Right.
Northern New Hampshire, northern Maine.
Right.
Not much around here.
A little bit around here, but yeah. Okay. And moving on. China, this is today's news, today being the 1st of May. May Day. China added nearly 40% less coal and gas-fired power capacity in the first quarter than it did a year ago, mainly due to stronger pollution controls and slower economic growth, according to a senior government advisor.
They're starting to get their act together.
Well, this goes back some distance. They can't be doing this just because the premier said that he was declaring war on air pollution, which happened about a month ago. This goes back some ways. I don't know how far, but I think the amount of renewable power that's going in China is just astonishing. It's so big. They are for every 3 megawatts that we're putting in, they're putting in 4.
Is that all?
Well, this is the United States versus China. China has the lead when it comes to renewable power. And the reason they've been opening coal-burning plants is because they have had a rapidly expanding economy. It was growing at 7%, 8% per year, and people are making more money. Individual workers in many places are making more money, and they are demanding more for that money. And they want to have lights in their houses, and they want to have heat, and they want to have all kinds of things. But the Chinese in the past had been giving people as an incentive to live in certain places free coal, for example. So they've got a lot of coal burning plants that are just heating houses and apartment buildings. And they've got a lot of change that has to be done. But their air pollution in China is so bad that 7-year-olds are coming down with lung cancer of a type that is usually associated with cigarette smoking. And they aren't smoking.
Wow.
You know, this is bad. This is really, really bad.
Well, several times I've showed pictures of various cities in China, and you can't really see.
Yeah.
Well, you can see the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And everybody's walking around with masks.
Yep. And it's not just China. Unfortunately, it's other places too. My son Jeff, who lives in Kenosha, married a Vietnamese girl in Saigon. I'm told that the people there still call it Saigon. But Susie went over and for the wedding, and she said that the people are they're lovely people. They're very friendly. They love Americans in Saigon.
Interesting.
Yeah. And she said half the people were walking around with masks because of the number of two-stroke motor scooters they were going around with, which are really polluting. And about half
about them anymore.
Yeah, half the people with masks had American flags on the masks. And you know, she said she said everybody there smiled at her, except for one person who came from Hanoi.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But nonetheless, I think they'd like to have good relations with the United States. But you know, the air pollution that they've got in many of these places is really bad. And finally, Platts confirmed CSX Corporation's train that exploded in Lynchburg, Virginia. Do you have a picture of this?
I got that one. Yep, I got
Oh,
that
man,
here.
this is sad. Of course, it didn't kill as many people as were killed in that horrible thing in Canada. 47 people or something were killed in that.
Yeah, the train picture I have, it was a small one to begin with, and I haven't expanded it.
The report that I read said that
Let's see if I can.
the firefighters decided just to let the fire burn. And I think part of that was probably because the oil from the train had spilled into a waterway.
There's the
And
waterway.
by letting it burn, they were able to remove much of what had gone on to the waterway.
Well,
And-
that sort of makes sense, really.
Yeah, and the I think it was 14 cars that derailed.
Something like that.
And it looked to me from the pictures that I had seen like maybe one car had exploded. Maybe it was more than that. I don't know. But
Well, you can
most
see
of
in
them
that
had
picture
not.
The water's burning.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This is stuff that had come. This had been sweet crude obtained by hydraulic fracking in North Dakota's Bakken Shale Basin. CSX CEO Michael Ward has also confirmed this to Bloomsburg. This from the DeSmog blog. And again, we're at a point here where we have to ask a question about this fracked oil because it explodes in accidents, which normal crude oil does not do. And the reason is because this stuff apparently fizzes like soda water when it's jolted around.
Well, there's hydrocarbons dissolved in it. It is
Yeah.
it's carbonated.
Yeah, except with hydrocarbons.
Except that it's not CO2.
It's
hydrocarbons.
propane and methane and butane and you name it, tane. And this stuff is dangerous. And one of the things that happened was that somebody down there in Virginia was saying, why in the world was this going through Lynchburg?
Well, there's an answer right here. They're
Yeah.
bringing it to Yorktown,
Yeah. Now,
where they're getting ready to build a facility to export it.
right. And one of the things they said in one of the articles that I read was it could have gone through Richmond.
Yep.
And this accident could have happened in Richmond.
Yep.
And so how do you deal with stuff that like this that can explode if it derails when it's in a major city? And that's a serious problem. That's what happened in Canada. I forget the name of the community in Canada where that happened. Do you remember, Tom?
They just mentioned one here that happened in, I think it was in Virginia. North Dakota, Castleton, North Dakota.
Oh, okay.
Same thing happened after Burlington Northern Santa Fe freight train carrying back and forth exploded in Castleton, North Dakota. The one that happened in Canada was in Quebec. It was just north of Vermont.
Right.
I don't
But
remember the name of the town, but it
killed
destroyed it.
it killed a large number of people.
It destroyed the town.
And it was just because a train had been stopped and the brake failed to hold.
And it rolled downhill.
And it rolled downhill. And it came to a curve in the line and it was going too fast and jumped the track. Accidents happen. And here is a material that basically explodes in the case of an accident. And it's going onto the train tracks. It's being conducted around the country. And the question that I've got is, do we need it? And the answer I've got for that is no, we don't need it. We're better off without it.
One of these sentence paragraphs here had a question. Was it going to increase the likelihood that they would complete the pipeline because these trains are blowing up right and left?
Well, the pipeline can blow up.
Absolutely.
You know, and
Absolutely.
the argument in favor of the pipeline has been, well, we need a pipeline because the trains can
safer.
blow up.
Yeah.
But I don't. The projection that I read on the pipeline was that it would produce 50 leaks per year.
Well, somewhere right now, I know it's in Alaska, the pipeline leaking. It's been leaking for a couple of 3 weeks, but nobody saw it.
Yeah.
And it's apparently spraying the oil up in the air, which is getting dispersed by the wind.
Oh my goodness.
And it's all over the ice. It's still icy wherever this is happening.
Yeah.
It's a golden mist all over the wind. And like I said, nobody noticed it was there. Somebody happened to be looking at Google Earth or something like that and said, "Hey, what's that?" And, oh, we got a hold of the pipeline.
That's sad.
Well,
I mean,
one would think they would know there was a reduction of pressure in that pipeline.
It doesn't have to have a big reduction in pressure to produce a big local effect.
No.
I mean, if you're losing a gallon a minute, you're doing serious damage. I read once that a quart of oil will pollute 5,000 gallons of water. And
I think I've heard something like that. That blows the mind.
well, you know, I mean, and especially when you consider that, for example, when I was a kid, or possibly a little earlier than when I was a kid, they used to spray swamps with oil to keep the mosquito population
Keep the mosquitoes down. I lived in a community where they used to pour oil on the road to keep the dust down.
Yes.
Dirt roads.
Yeah. I don't know when they stopped doing that, but I don't think it was all that long ago.
I don't think it was either. And we welcomed it. You know?
Yeah, well,
Or
it kept the
come by
dust
and
down.
You get all this dust, and
It turned the dust.
made it almost like macadam.
Yeah, and it turned what dust did exist into something that was highly toxic. And I hear somebody coming in. I think it's time for us to go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us. This is the end of our line. I hope everybody has a chance to watch Carol Levin and Dave Bonta and Ken Azar as they join us in the previously recorded segment.
I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't get spun off and you can look at it separately on the web.
I would hope. It was a good show.
It was a good show.
Yeah.
Something we should see.
Yeah, so we will say goodbye and see you next time.